Hey everybody, we are recording our second back-to-back episodes where Sean has just moved, and so if you notice a significant difference in his audio quality, it is new and temporary. So I imagine he's going to go undergo some sort of an office reconditioning with Audra, same as I did.
Yeah, I'll take care of that before next time, and talk as little as possible this time.
No, I don't think you're going to be able to get around that. I think we're just going to have to contend, because otherwise it's just
gonna be Johnny.
Come on, Dave. Can you please carry the ball right now?
Yeah, people can deal. Like it's fine. We can understand you. It's not terrible. It's 2 episodes out of 217.
Oh.
Yeah, and Sean not talk right.
Yeah, fuck you all.
Is the comment. Okay.
Yes, they're still doing you Simpsons.
I don't know if that's advisable, but it does appear to be true. So anybody, actually I have one thing I want to mention before we get to something cools, is that our friend Garrett Robinson created some shirts that are pretty cool. It's what it says, have I mentioned I write books? Because this is, it's a conversation starter, which I actually said, these shirts are great. They're awesome. And I don't want the conversation. So
right, I don't either.
Other people,
yeah, I don't either.
For people who are gregarious, for people who are outgoing, it's a really cool design. He had custom art done, and you can check him out at sterlingandstone.net/go/Garrett. 2 R's, 2 T's. sterlingandstone.net/go/Garrett for the, have I mentioned I write books, or do you know I write books? I'm sorry, I forget the...
It's how I mentioned I write books.
Have I mentioned I write books?
Yes, you have mentioned it. I'm
gonna mentioning it.
I'm going to get one that says, have I mentioned that I kill people? And that will be the conversation stopper.
Oh.
Yes. So mine's actually related. Same artist, I believe. We're doing, when our site goes live, which is just a couple weeks away, right?
Oh my God. I'll believe it when I see it, because it's just too good to be. It's kind of like that scene at the end of Contact when it's too overwhelming. And Jodie Foster can barely. They should have sent a poet. That's what our website is going to be like.
Yeah. So we Seth can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think we're a couple weeks away, and it's built for merchandising. We're going to definitely do some of that, really for you guys more than our fiction side. I mean, we'd love to do it with our fiction, but I think you guys are more interested in that kind of stuff. Like someone in the comments just said, "Hey, when are we going to get the Dave's M-dash shirt?" So if you weren't part of boot camp, that was when you die with an M-dash, which is kind of awesome. But we are starting with 2. Dave's going to design an I Hate You All shirt, and that's going to be exciting. And for the optimists among us, we already have, it's ready to go, and we'll start selling it once the site goes live. It's a put a unicorn in it shirt, and it's adorable. So Dave's will be dark as sin, and this one is very cheery, very, very cute.
If you haven't seen the last Mabelcorn episode of Gravity Falls, you should see that, just as an aside. Got to dig that out.
Yeah, here's the thing. If the shirts that I make take off, I'm gonna want to do that a lot more. I like designing.
It's okay.
I like designing horribly dark things. So.
Yeah, we want you to. That's the thing. Are you threatening us? I'm not quite sure.
It's got to be a good T-shirt company. We're gonna have to get the one. We're gonna have to ask what one Garrett used, because we're not using that big one that I won't mention the name and give them any press. But their shirts fucking.
There's another one that we found that's pretty good, but I'm trying to remember what Garrett's was. I could probably go look, but I recognize the name. So yeah.
And yeah, because when people buy a shirt, they're supporting you, but you don't want it to come at the cost of quality. And we did one shirt because people asked us to do a "What Would Mauricio Do" thing, and we did a shirt, and somebody bought it, and they put a picture on I don't know if it was Facebook or Twitter, and they were happy about their shirt, but I was like, oh my God, that looks like hell. And I reached out to them. I said, please return that. That looks like shit. I don't want you to have that. That's a horrible experience. Really, because it's not like we're making a ton of money on a fucking shirt. I appreciate the support, but that's a horrible shirt and nobody should have to buy that. And I took everything off of that website immediately.
Garrett's appears to be on Shopify.
It was Cafe Press, by the way.
Okay. There's the one we're not going
to.
No. Yeah, Garrett's got a Shopify store going here, and he's actually got coffee cups, shirts, hoodies, and framed posters. And the unframed posters. So there you go.
Yeah, we're gonna do a lot of that stuff. I love the idea of Dave designing shirts, and I think Dave is very quotable, and I'd love to see that. But we're starting simple. We're starting with the two sides of Sterling and Stone there. The put a unicorn in it, and the I hate you all. And that should be a lot of fun.
MG on wants tank tops. MG on should say, "Have I mentioned that I work out?"
Dave, do you have anything cool?
No.
But the whole episode was just
okay. I really didn't give Preacher much justice, so I'm just gonna talk about that again. The thing I like about Preacher, and there was an after Preacher episode. Show, right? Yeah, with Chris Hart. Yes, it's a real preacher, actually. No, it's a very dark show, and they had an after Preacher thing with Chris Hardwick, who does that on AMC, and he was talking about how the comic was a little bit different. In the comic, they kind of just jump right into the action. They pulled back, and they're actually doing like story before the comic, and there's so much mystery, you don't know what's going on. And I don't know if it was like that in the comic or not, but I absolutely love the mystery. They have all these things going on, and it's very dark. And you have these characters. You have a kid that has a hole, like his mouth. They call him arse face because he shot himself in the face with a shotgun, and now his mouth is just like one big puckery thing, and he's absolutely horrifying.
That's not like something you would make up.
Yeah. It's horrifying looking, but you don't know why he shot himself, and you know there's something there, and they're like seeding all these mysteries, and I absolutely fucking love the way they're doing it. Very slow approach. Yeah, I don't want to say too much about it. You're best going in not knowing.
I don't know why you didn't say this when you're something cool last time.
Because I got sidetracked by the zombie or
Grimace.
Yeah. So definitely check it out. I hope the show does well because I want to see the show on the air for a while. And
what network is it on, Dave?
It's on AMC, and what's his face is behind it. I can't fucking forget his name now. I remember his name.
What other shows he got?
Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen is one of the producers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a huge story about like how they got the rights to the comic because like a lot of people wanted to do this comic for a long time, like 10 years or something, and eventually the rights somehow he got them, and now they're doing it with one of the writers from Breaking Bad. It's just fucking awesome. So
have you seen The Path?
No, not yet.
Oh, I really want to see.
I don't have Hulu.
So the t-shirt thing was not my something cool. I do have one. So just Sean, didn't you do outlaw bars once for your something cool? I feel like you did.
What?
Didn't you do that? I did. Yeah.
Okay, because biker bars.
No, they're protein bars. So that actually sets a little bit of precedent because I've been trying to, we just snack like we're writers and we sit there and we snack. And I was like, okay, screw this. I'm going to see if I can find like what healthy snacks are there out there that aren't just like chips and shit, because I like crunchy, salty. I like sugar too, but I need like chips and stuff when my resistance is low and I just want to eat shit. And so I did a search for like, I think I looked for paleo snacks actually. So which would be higher protein and stuff. And I discovered roasted edamame, which is surprisingly good, I thought. So if you've never had edamame, it's soybeans, right?
That was
that I can see that. But usually they're steamed like peas or cooked, I mean, and then you pop them out of peas out of a pod and you eat them, you eat the beans. But it's just like it's eating vegetables, and I'm okay with eating vegetables, but whatever, like that's not going to be my snack. But you can buy them like roasted with a little bit of salt, and they're like really high in protein and low in carbohydrates and stuff. And so anyway, I've been eating those, and so kudos for that.
I'll have to try that.
They're a little dry. One of the things I've done it's weird, but they're a little weird. The texture is weird because they're overly dry maybe. And so I know that this is kind of strange, but it does work. And I know it probably sounds gross, and it is a little gross, but sometimes I'll have them with peanut butter. But that gives them a little. I know it is a little gross, but they're crunchy, and I still like peanut butter and stuff, and so it works. And I'd rather do that than Cheez-Its or something like that. So, I also got some roasted, what do you call those, chickpeas, but they aren't as high in protein, and those are really good. you can get those with like Bombay spice and stuff.
I'll vouch for the roasted edamame, but not when you get it with peanut butter. Then I'm out.
Have you had roasted edamame?
Yeah, but never with peanut butter.
Okay, it's just the feel is weird. They have a very papery feel to them. So that was a way of, I don't know, giving them some more substance. So anyway, the only other thing that I wanted to mention was that we're doing, I don't know if you're, by the time this airs, you can still check it out, but we're doing our, we're getting we needed a logo. Here's the problem that we faced. We needed a logo for our LOL imprint. And much like terrible book covers, I had nowhere to turn. Now you can see the final result at sterlingandstone.net/go/LOL. And you can see what we ended up with. But I was really, really flummoxed for a while and just considering just having some hobos handle it. And then Dave talked me out of it. And do you remember that discussion, Dave?
Yeah, I did. I said, okay, hobos are great for hand jobs and blowies, but they're not really good with logos.
Usually not. We thought the ads were going to get too professional. We have a call with these people. It's going to be fun.
We have a feeling we're getting called to the principal's office.
Yeah, I think they're going to say, okay, listen, guys, you guys got to stick to the script. This isn't working.
It's got to be working though, because they keep us on.
And yes, why do they keep us on? They keep us on because we tell people about their awesome service, and their service is awesome, or people wouldn't like it. And
have we given the name of the company yet?
It's 99designs.com/SPP. And that is where you want to go for your book cover, web design work, like art stuff for your web, or a logo. Any of those things, and maybe even a shirt design. They got a bunch of different stuff that they offer there. And the awesome thing is that
you've got like 3 or 4 designers, right, Dave?
No. They have more than that. They have like 8 zillion, I think now. Okay. They have entire planets of people devoted to making designs for you.
They're cloning vast clone armies of designers to suit your needs.
And that's the only thing that can explain how you get so many great designs whenever you do a contest. And that is what you do. You do a contest. You say, hey, I need this sort of design. You tell the designers what you're looking for. Maybe you give them some examples, and then a bunch of designers will compete. And then you pick the one. You pick the one that you like most. And you can have your audience get in on it. And that's part of the fun, too, because you're building sort of a brand awareness there, especially for like book covers. A lot of times, making your audience part of the choice of the book cover like gets them involved and gets them interested in it, and it raises awareness that you have a book coming out that they might not otherwise care about. So
other companies don't have clone armies of designers. That's why these guys care so much. Do you remember that scene from The Matrix where there's all the pods of was actually filmed in their back office? So they got as many designers as you need, and they'll design. And we saw that with our logo contest. If it's still going on and it's still live when you hear this, you can vote.
They probably wouldn't like being compared to the Matrix and having slave labor, but
no, it's a flattering comparison.
They're willful.
Well, the Matrix added a new storyline. These are people who said, I want the convenience of pod transport to work, but the visuals are the same. So, but yeah.
What if I wanted to write a book about a big giant bear of a man who was making sweet love to a big giant Snoopy doll?
I love when Sean interjects.
Get out of the ad read. Go away, you echoey motherfucker. So, anyway, our contest where you can check out the results of our logo contest. And what I like about the contest thing is that you get a smattering of, you know what I mean? You get a lot to choose from. And there are some in here I really like. There's some that I don't like as much, but you get so many that you can find one. And then in the second round, so basically for the live show, I think like there's an hour left or something in the first round, and then we'll pick a few and those people advance, and then they can kind of refine it again. We say, okay, you got really close. Now show me more of this, which is great. So anyway, you can see that at sterlingandstone.net/go/LOL. And the link, if you wanted to start your own contest, which you should, if you need a book cover and you don't want to have one of the crappy ones done by hobos, is 99designs.com/SPP. Use the link, get the free Power Pack upgrade, valued at $99. Get you more designer time and attention, so you get more choices.
And remember, kids, hobos are only good for hand jobs.
He had to get that in there one more time.
That's a t-shirt.
All right. So today's topic is one that I actually made a note of when we were doing boot camp. I think that there's a lot of really fertile ground for creative shows in boot camp, because when we got rolling on this, and honestly, like I could see this being a several part show if it really goes well. When we got rolling on this on boot camp, we only had, if you were there for boot camp, we only had like, I want to say 40 or 50 minutes of sort of live content. And then we did a lot of Q&A. And so trying to fit this stuff in was like, wow, I just want to expand upon it. So let's do a self-publishing podcast. So if you were at the boot camp, some of this will be a little bit repeated, but we're going to expand and we're going to grow it out. And we're going to talk about this on other shows and stuff too. So anyway, it is writing good dialogue, fight scenes, arguments, emotional content, all that great stuff to make your show, your scenes, your books more vibrant and exciting in that way.
Yeah, so you guys want to start? I think I should just chime in when necessary to keep my words to a minimum.
Yeah, but don't worry about it, dude, because it's going to be a really stilted discussion if I feel like I have to do all the stuff and then Dave's going to interject a few and then I'm going to say, so you just don't worry about it. Like people, you're fine. But that said, so I don't even know where to begin with this. I think that one of the things I gave this piece of advice on a Smarter Artist podcast episode recently was, how do you write realistic dialogue? And the number one thing is to listen. So Stephen King's definition of what a writer does, I think, is really apt for dialogue. Is he says that your job is to tell the truth, whether it's pretty or ugly or whatever it is. Your job is just to say what happened and tell the truth. And I think that that's true of dialogue too. We'll get. I know that Dave has mentioned this a few times, that people will every once in a while complain and say, "Oh, well, there's too much profanity in your books," and it's like
those
that's
people.
Well, yeah, I mean, because if you go out into not into most public places necessarily, but if you're listening in on an argument in an emotionally intense situation, look, I mean, adults swear, like usually kids swear sometimes too, and that's just. You're trying to relate dialogue as it is rather than what you feel it is maybe proper.
No, we should write a utopian society book where nobody swears, nobody hurts anybody, everybody gets along, and it's a real fun fucking book.
One of the things that I don't like when you see a lot of this is very true in scripted stuff, is that people wait for the other person to speak, right? So one of the things that we talked about in boot camp was the show Parenthood, which has a lot of overlapping dialogue, because it's family dynamics. So there will be scenes with, 10, 12 people in the scenes, and they're talking over each other just like families do. And they do it with arguments, and they do it with just general conversation. And I love it because like the subtitles can never keep up. Like they just give up. Like they'll have one sentence and then they'll be like a good 30 seconds behind. But that's real life. And that's one of the reasons I like that show so much, because even though it's a network show, and I wish that the language was a little saltier, just because, that does make it feel a little artificial. There are times when the characters are clearly speaking to the network and not to the truth of the script. But having said that, it does so much for a network show. And that overlapping dialogue is just one of the best. So we were talking about that last week during boot camp. And then last night, we were watching it as a family. And there's this this argument that happens between Crosby and Jasmine, who is his girlfriend, his fiance. They're going to get married. And this is worth setting up real quick. So,
are you spoiling this for me? I don't think I'm that far along yet.
Oh, it's early. It's season 2. Are you in season 2 yet?
Yeah, but they're not thinking about getting married yet where we are. I think we're at the very beginning of season 2.
Okay, well, this is like 10 episodes in, and yes, it's kind of a spoiler, but whatever. So they're going to get married, and Jasmine is a little controlling, but also Crosby's kind of a dipshit. Like, he's a lovable dipshit. I like him a lot. But he's in his 30s and lives on a houseboat, and, he just doesn't really have his shit together. And Jasmine does. And so they're going to a minister, and he asks them to draw a picture of their entire, like imagine where you're going to be 10 years from now. What does your family look like? And so I won't spoil that because it's actually very funny to see how that unfolds. But basically, he realizes that she's got all of these plans and he doesn't, right? He doesn't, he's making it up day by day. And he just starts getting really agitated and realizing that she's kind of making all the rules and telling him what to do, and he can't make, he can't decide anything for himself. She's always correcting him. And so he's bitching about this to his brother Adam. And this is great dialogue. This is a great argument. And if you can pull off some of what this argument did in your own work, it's just so powerful. So that night, he's loading the dishwasher. Dave can relate to this. He's loading the dishwasher, and he makes a suggestion that, oh, these bowls are small. Maybe they should go on top of the cups, and instead of down there with the plates. And then he puts it up top, and Jasmine takes it out and she puts it at the bottom, and she says, no, because then they won't really get clean, and we'll have to wash them again. and he just explodes. Okay, he hasn't said along the way, there hasn't been these little arguments. He's basically just bottled everything up, and in his head, we tell ourselves these stories, right? And so in his head, he's telling himself the story that Jasmine's always controlling and isn't going to let him make any decisions. And so he just explodes on her, and he says, how am I supposed to marry anybody who won't let me even make a decision about how we wash the dishes? And it just turns into this really ugly fight, and it happens fast, and it's immediate, and they're screaming at each other at the same time, overlapping dialogue. And to me, that argument felt so visceral and so real, because that's how arguments between people who love each other happen. Like,
I want to know how they got in my house.
They don't necessarily have it, because it's so not about the dishwasher, right? It's so not, and he even says that. He says, this isn't about the dishes, it's about the last year. And then the next day he's trying to apologize to her, and he's like, it's stupid to fight about the dishwasher. And she's like, you said it wasn't even about the dishwasher, right? So Dave, I know you could totally relate to the actual dishes, but it's the mechanism. It's the fact that arguments, big arguments like that rarely just happen. They build up. It's bubbling lava before there's an actual eruption. And if you can nail that by seeding that stuff in your story and the small little elements, and then have it really explosive and say the really just cutting, mean things that it seems like, wow, it's too early in this argument to say these things, but that's because they've been brewing for a long time.
Yeah. Kevin M. Lute says, so how do you do overlapping dialogue on the page? It's pretty easy. You'll have somebody talking, and then you'll have like the M dash, my favorite thing, to show that there, and then you say like Sean interjected or Sean cut in or something, and then whatever that dialogue is, it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, and just a lot of short sentences. Johnny does this a lot.
I've become aware of how often I do it. And usually it's just, I do he interrupted, or sometimes I'll do that, but a lot of times it's just rat-a-tat. It's just like this, then this, then this.
Yeah, and you don't need to say he interrupted if you're using an M dash, because if you're just cutting to the next person's speech, then you know that they were interrupted and this is what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of this type of dialogue because it's just, it rings very real to me. I think that, true to some of the things that Sean was saying about the brewing argument, is that I think that a lot of times when dialogue feels stilted and artificial, and argument specifically, is that they're very on point. And so you might have in your, you might have story shopped out the entire thing that you're doing, and you might have a beat where, okay, these people need to have an argument to expose this specific thing. There needs to be a discord between these two people. And so you get this very tidy little argument, or this very tidy little bit of convenient dialogue where they're discussing exactly the thing that needs to be discussed. Now, sometimes that occurs. Sometimes it's like, hey, we need to talk, and then they're gonna have this discussion about, let's talk about us, or let's talk about this thing. Let's talk about the dishwasher, which is becoming this big problem. But usually it's like Sean said, it's something, a problem erupts because of something else entirely, or they end up obliquely discussing something that the story needs to be discussed because it leads that way from something that was inconsequential or totally sideways. And if you're very, like, you want to be economic in your story and not have a lot of loose ends, but that said, That's not usually the way that a lot of dialogue happens. And if people only, you have such neat dialogue and such neat arguments that handle specifically the beats that you need to hit in the story, then it comes across as
it's amateur. Yeah, it's really, and I've seen that too. And indies do tend to be worse by far in this particular thing than traditional stuff, where like in an argument, you want to keep things brief and you want to keep it moving, right? And you'll see big old monologues, like people talking for 2 pages while the other person on the other side of the argument is just sitting down and letting them monologue. Like it's not a James Bond movie where they're strapped to a chair and a laser's about to cut them in 2.
Now I'm going to spend exactly enough time telling you my evil plan for you to think of something to get out of it.
Yeah, it's just people don't do that. I know that Dave and I wrote one short story where somebody kind of monologued their plan, but he drugged the woman. So he was able to really talk about what he was going to do because she was drugged and had to just sit there and listen to his shit. So we built that into the story. It could be, because no one does that in real life. If I'm actually, like Cindy and I don't argue often, but when we do, she doesn't let me just say what I want for 5 minutes straight. That's not the way it works. In the face. So yeah, you have to like, it has to be believable. It's terse, it's cutting, it's really fast back and forth. Another thing that I've seen in indie books that is just stop it. It's every time a new person is speaking, it's a new paragraph. Like no exceptions, 100% of the time. And I've seen that, and it gets messy. If you have 2 different people talking in the same paragraph, it's so sloppy, and you lose the reader.
The other thing that, because I've been paying more attention to this stuff, and just the mechanics, the things that I just do without thinking about. If you have 2 people, you usually can get away with back and forth. But if you have 3 or more, you need to attribute a lot more as to who exactly is speaking. And if you need sort of a monologue, you need something to be explained, and it's done in the heat of the moment. I usually have them fight a little bit first, and then the person is like, just, will you listen? Or something occurs that just stops the action, because until that point, it's not like, hold on, I know we're arguing, but just like Sean said, okay, let me explain to you in the middle of this heated argument without you interrupting me what exactly is wrong. Go ahead.
Well, I just think that there's a fine line there, because everything that you have, all dialogue really should serve a purpose. So you don't want to have just, how's the weather? What's going on? Right? Like it should serve a purpose, but it also shouldn't read like heavy exposition. So you have to find ways of being clever and having your characters deliver needed information through dialogue without it being ham-fisted. And sometimes that just takes revision. Like it's okay to be stupid and ham-fisted your first time through because you're getting the information on the page, but that's what revision is for. You think, okay, I have everything that needs to be on this page, but it just doesn't sound genuine. And you want your dialogue to sound like people actually speak. And so that means that it's not perfect grammar. One thing that I always think works is dropping words. So like, I can't think of a great example on the fly, but like, let's say somebody is saying, Jenny went to the store to get milk. And then the next person said, went to the store, eh? Instead of Jenny went to the store. Like there's just, people clip their words when they're speaking. They in natural conversation, we don't use perfect sentences. And so, being really aware of that, it makes your dialogue sound more fluid.
You just need to listen to the way that people really talk. One of the things to remember too is that a lot of what occurs in any, especially arguments. So I haven't said it right here right now, but I've said it many other times. I love writing arguments, and they're my favorite thing to write, because a lot can be said in a good argument. And in an argument, or just dialogue in general, you have to pay attention to not just the literal words that are being said, but the things, and this is going to sound like a cliche, the things that aren't being said. So so
No, I don't think that's cliche at all. I think that's really important.
It is very important. When a lot of people fight, couples, they don't fight with, let me explain to you exactly what's wrong right now. It's usually there's sometimes a little bit of passive aggression that occurs. Sometimes there's the idea of the silent treatment, like somebody's just acting strange. There's just something, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Like that.
Or they're putting plastic on the bottom part of the dishwasher.
Right. Or Sean has given this example a few times. I actually haven't seen the movie, but I can picture it in my head. I know similar scenes like this. And
is this in the bedroom?
Yes. Maybe I should. For a lot of stuff that we do, it is visual. It becomes on a page, but it starts visually. It's like so movies and TV are the best fodder for me. And so anyway, the example is, as Sean said, it's a movie called In the Bedroom. And there's a scene that occurs. Do you want to describe? Why don't you describe it?
Yeah. So, and sorry if you were in boot camp last week, because I know we did this there too. But it's basically there's a husband and wife. It's Sissy Spacek and Tom Wilkinson. So they're a little older, and their 20-year-old-ish son gets involved with an older woman, and Marissa Tomei, and her ex-husband, I think, kills him. And everyone in town knows he did it, but they can't really. Well, it's in the opening scene, dude, or one of the opening scenes. So they know he did it, but they can't really prove it. And there's like these really just awkward exchanges where they like run into him in person, and it's just really ugly. And they're having to, Sissy Spacek and Tom Wilkinson are having to deal with this in the aftermath of losing their son. And there's just all this painful quiet between them. And it's hard to watch. You're just watching this marriage suffer in silence. And then really close to the end of the movie, they finally fight. And it's a fight. It's one of the most visceral, memorable fights in film. And it's not a huge fight. And it's not like they're punching each other or anything, but it just feels so real to me. And the way, she smashes a dish, and it's like, you let him get away with everything.
And it happens out of nowhere is the importance of it.
Right. And it's because all the things that they haven't been saying, like they don't have any way to deal with their grief. The fight is really about grief, but it quickly turns into blame. And you just know this is a couple who loves each other, and they are devoted to each other, but they lost their son, and they don't know how to deal with it. And they're doing it through this really ugly, emotionally violent exchange. And that's just the kind of thing that as an artist, we want to capture those moments because they feel so real. And, I think that, I think it was last episode that I was talking about the short story that Johnny and I just finished called Empty Nest. There's great dialogue in that short. And there's a lot of real emotional moments. Enough, to where my son cried when I read it out loud to him. And that was on the strength of dialogue, and it was on the strength of a lot happening in a short amount of space. And that's the thing. You want to reveal character through action, and what isn't said or done is always important, and sometimes more important than what you actually get on the page.
What Sean said about the in the bedroom argument being about grief more than anger, I think was what you said, is super important too, is to remember that you as the author should understand the emotional motivations behind your characters, even if the characters themselves don't understand it. So if two people are fighting, person A might not know what's going on with person B for real, but person B also might not really know what's going on for them. And if you understand that, hurt usually comes out sounding like anger, if you understand those things, then you'll be able to imbue their body language and their gestures and so forth, and the lead up to the scene and the aftermath of the scene in such a way that the reader will get it. Even if they don't get it on a conscious level, they'll understand because of the things that foreshadowed and because of the things that followed, that they weren't actually, because fights between people who love each other are of the subset of arguments that I like to write. Those are the best, because they're so emotionally intricate, and you can have people do such terrible things in a short period of time and understand that their motivations are going to come out on the other end because they're hurt more than they're victorious, say, after the scene, or they're crushed more than they're, I don't know, beaten in any definable way. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, a really good argument, and actually, we were talking about this Jasmine Crosby argument this morning. Ethan came in and asked me, so who did you think was right in that argument? And I said, well, they both were.
Oh, that's a great point.
They both were. And a really great argument is one where you can get behind either side. You can say, okay, well, Crosby was right because Jasmine is kind of controlling and she should back off and she should let him make some more rules. And Crosby, or Jasmine is right because he is kind of infantile. And one of the things she screams at him is, if I don't make the decisions, then nothing gets done. We don't do anything. And she's right because she has had to take the ball and run with it. So they're both right. And it's not, how they handled it was very ugly, but it was also very believable. So it wasn't that either one was right or wrong. It was that they could have been more appropriate with how they exchanged, but that was also because they waited too long, or Crosby waited too long. He let it all bottle up inside him and then he just raged. And so I think that when you can write a really effective argument where you can fully believe either person as being right and righteous, then that's good writing.
That's a fantastic point, is to remember that each character in an argument or just a dialogue scene can't help but see the world through their own eyes. And if you go into an argument thinking that somebody is right and somebody is wrong, usually it doesn't end up being as good of an argument. There's this scene in, I mean, most people won't know this scene, but in Unicorn Western 8, where there's
great wedding scene.
Great wedding scene. There's this is a significant spoiler, so I won't say too much, but there is a side that you would expect to be victorious in this discussion. And it just doesn't turn out that way. And when you start to be able to see through dialogue and through body action, through body language and just backstory, like stuff that is explained in a discussion, or stuff that you know at a time, or stuff that's explained afterward, and you begin to see the motivations of the quote unquote bad guy, and you wonder, both sides are equally valid. I've given this example a ton of times too. One of my favorite shows is Battlestar Galactica, because you see bad characters, quote unquote bad characters, do good things, and you see good characters do things that you're like, well, that's not cool, but you understand their motivation because they're real complex people.
Everyone is a hero of their own story, or victim, or both.
Yeah, and you can't ever forget that, because you're doing it as a service to the reader. One thing also that you can never, you're damaging your copy, but I think this is especially true with dialogue. I think it's true with 100% of your work, but I think with dialogue, you're damaging your copy if you don't read it out loud. If you don't take the time, because dialogue has a rhythm, and it's not, if you want something to sound really artificial, there's a chance that it can sound more artificial because you're putting those words on the page. But when you're reading them out loud, you're going to catch it. That doesn't sound like something somebody would actually say. And I know, Johnny and I have talked about this, where he doesn't like the idea of reading it out loud, but that's what I'm for. That's one of my roles. But if you're just doing it by yourself, it's worth the time to read it out loud, because dialogue does read differently, and it will read more authentically.
And if you've ever had your book put into audio, that's just sort of a bonus round, because you get to hear your own dialogue recited back to you. This is why I think that TV and movies and media that aren't books are excellent ways to learn good dialogues and good arguments, because and I know we need to get to fight scenes too before we finish this off, because that's actually physically fighting. But that's why I think those are so important, is because it should ring on the ear, even though you're reading it. And if you are able to hear these things, and by the way, no offense to hearing impaired people, you're going to experience it differently. But you're gonna, you know what I mean? Like it's these are the things that are more just experiential rather than just I'm gonna sit down and do a session with some sort of writing course teaching me how to do good dialogue, because it's not grammatically correct either. Well, actually, Sean.
No, it's not, and I have no tolerance for books or shows with bad dialogue. You know, last night we just started season 4 of Orange is the New Black, and that show has fantastic dialogue. And I turned to Cindy and I'm like, man, this show has some great dialogue, and that feeds you. You know, if you're exposing yourself to strong dialogue and really paying attention, you're naturally going to have a trickle down effect, and it will help you.
So let me give just 2 quick examples on dialogue, and then we can move to physical fight scenes. And it has to do with the grammatically correct thing. And this is I'm going to hit this from 2 separate angles. One of the things, so technically speaking, although I suppose this is probably evolving in the English language, but technically speaking, the word snuck is wrong. And this is something that is in my head. Like, I know this. The correct version is sneaked.
But it's got to be snuck if it's spoken, because
right.
95
nobody says it. And so it's to the point where I'll actually tag it in dialogue and I'll be like, it's killing me to have this character say
but
snuck.
But it has to. You know, it has to. And Johnny is really proper with that word. There's been times where we've had to change it back to be wrong, because wrong in that context is right. So that's a knowing your why too. You know, you have to have people speak like they actually speak.
And the second one I'll share is that you can notice just interesting little things that are dialogue will say interesting things about characters. We have a character in Invasion, but I don't think you've met him yet with the released books, but you will. And he's got some interesting ways of speaking that aren't technically correct, but it informs the character. So the example I'm going to give is I was walking around the grocery store today, and I shared this in Slack. I overhear this guy, and he says, it can't. I think he was on the phone, or he was talking to somebody who was walking with. He goes, it can't just be me doing things. Man, this arrangement has to be receptacle. And I'm like, okay, so it's supposed to be reciprocal was what he was going for there. But people say shit like that, and you need to remember that. Like, that says something about the character.
Yeah,
one thing you can do if you're using the wrong word is to italicize it so people know that you're not an idiot.
Well, I only add italics for emphasis. Like, would you ever have somebody correct them, or just kind of let it go? Or?
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, I think ideally you just let it go. You don't italicize it because they're not emphasizing it when they speak. But I'm telling you, the editor would probably italicize it for that reason, because you have to let the reader know it's not a mistake, which just kind of sucks, because ideally you should just be able to, because italics are for emphasis and you're not emphasizing the wrong word. So to me, it doesn't feel right to emphasize it, but to me, it also feels wrong to confuse the reader or make them feel like you have a typo. So it's one of those, you can't really win. You want to have the guy flub the wrong word, but not, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, it is tricky.
It's tricky to rock a rhyme that's right on time.
I was thinking the same. You and I, Dave, ever since
we are the same person.
Yeah.
You're the fitter version of me.
Fit Dave. All right, so fight scenes. So, and this would apply more globally to action scenes, but what do you feel? Any quick tips? I feel like we haven't had enough, Dave. Any quick tips on actual physical fight scenes or action scenes?
Well, one of the things I see in a lot of beginning writing or bad writing is for a fight scene where the person in the fight is somehow hyper aware of every single thing that's going on in a fight scene. I think like the guy behind the bar, like he can sense that he's grabbing a bottle and he's going to come rush at him. It's not like that in a real fight unless you're a superhero, I suppose. It should be chaotic.
Well, if you were writing the the novelization of the Matrix or something,
yeah.
Right? But no, that's not it. I think that in a well choreographed fight scene, you actually want the reader in a lot of ways to be the choreographer. So I think this is true for sex scenes too. I think that if you're describing every single thing that happens, that's bad writing. You need to set the stage and, give the broad strokes.
Well, it's not necessarily bad writing. It can be done for stylistic reasons.
And
yes, but for the most part,
on POV, it depends on POV too. Like if it's an omniscient narrator, then you could do more. But if it's like a limited POV, then you want to just write about what that character can sense. And if you need to break in like say what's happening in other, I mean, you can break the chapter up or and have switch from other character. Yeah, switch POVs.
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
My counterexample on the sex scenes was going to be like Future of Sex, which is hypersensitized for a reason.
Yes, but that's not even what I'm talking about, because even there, it's setting the stage and it's explicit in the way it needs to be explicit, but it's not explaining every single movement, like in and out. Like I don't want to. We don't need to go there. But there is a way. Like I've read some erotica.
She moves her leg, rotates her right hand 30 degrees.
Yes, like just really exact, and that's. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's ever effective. I think that's what somebody who doesn't have the confidence in their scene setting, that's what they do to compensate.
Well, I think it's important to understand that in a fight scene, if it's not omniscient and you're in the head of somebody, that the narration of that scene should reflect the rush of emotion that accompanies a real fight. Now, I've actually never been in a real fight, but I've been in emotionally intense situations because I'm intense, right? But just in general, and it would be the same for sex scenes. Like your character is probably not going to be hyper analyzing it because they're in an emotional state, right? It's a rush.
Or say witty things unless you're Spider-Man.
Witty things, which I've had characters say witty things, but then it always breaks the mood. With fight scenes. So I would draw a parallel here. If you've ever known somebody who's been really good at a formal martial art, like they're a black belt in karate, and if you've ever known a black belt in karate, and that's what they know about quote unquote fighting, and then they get into a real fight, like you'll know that shit lasts about 5 seconds, because somebody just who knows nothing about formal fighting is just going to knock their ass to the ground if they're bigger, stronger, faster, or bolder. And so I think the same thing is true of a carefully choreographed fight scene. Characters don't square off, and then one person throws a punch, and then the other person throws a punch, and then the person ducks below, and you know what I mean. It's not so neat like it would be in a black belt karate competition. It's fights are dirty and messy, and things get knocked over, and people don't. Somebody might have a punch in them, but they don't get it out because they're too close quarters and they just get something broken over their face or whatever. It's important to note that it's like dialogue. Like dialogue isn't, I say this, okay, now you respond, and then they say this, okay, now I'll respond.
Well,
it's not
real fights like sex is usually shorter and messier than like it is in the movies, right? It's awkward, right?
Sean said messy.
And so, like, that's just the truth. In movies, it's very choreographed. It's an elegant affair, and most fights are not like that. They're like Johnny said,
over in about 15
quarters.
Seconds. Yeah,
right. They're like a couple of punches are thrown, and then people are like, that's it. Like it's done. And so, if you can bring that kind of element into...
We're talking about sex scenes or fight scenes now?
Well, both. I think they're really interchangeable here in a lot of the things we're talking about. I think you want to you need to trust your reader more to fill in a lot of the blanks and to let them put their own experience, because they're not just drawing on their own experience from, their own life and fights that they may or may not have been in or that they saw in high school or whatever, but they also have the fights they've seen in film and television, the fights they've read about. So they have a whole world of experience, with sex and with fights and with arguments and anything that you're trying to write about. It's okay to rely a little bit on their frames of reference and trust them as readers and give them the base elements that they need to fill in those blanks and not just over choreograph.
Another thing I see wrong in books is where, and even Sean has done this when writing fight scenes, where the space is not properly utilized. Like a lot of times, like there is a distance, and that distance matters. In there are places where everybody is in a room, and you have to visualize these things in a room or outside, wherever it is, wherever the fight's taking place. You have to visualize the space. You have to visualize how long it takes somebody to actually get somewhere. And a lot of times, like bad writing, it's just like everybody's on a blank stage and just doing whatever, and there's no time. Time is a very important factor to consider when writing a fight scene, because it is all about time and how long somebody takes to get from one place to another, and that allows somebody to counter or be surprised or whatever.
Yeah, that's really true, and it's not just for action scenes, it's for general too. I was reading a book not too long ago where like just crazy time jumps all over the place. Like they're having, this couple is having a conversation in a car, and then they pull up at a restaurant, and one sentence later they're at the booth, and then it's like, well, like it's immediate in the way it's writing, but they're like, are they teleporters?
As you're listening, as you're describing it, I'm thinking it would be cool if it was done intentionally and well, but this
it's
not done.
Not at all. No, it's supposed to be just seamless, but it's like 5 seconds have passed in their actual dialogue exchange, but 2 minutes has passed in what geographically needed to happen.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, you just have to really be aware of that. You can pass that time easily, but you have to let the reader know that the time has passed. It can't be just, one giant run-on sentence, basically, that makes all this thing happen.
But that said, I think that the rhythm of narration can, and in some cases should, if you can pull it off, reflect the pace of a scene. So Dave and I actually gave totally opposite answers, it seemed like, when we were doing this in boot camp, as to how to pace a fight scene. Dave said short sentences, and I said sometimes I like to do long ones. I think that
depending.
Right. Depending.
Yeah,
and
both work.
When I'm saying long, I don't mean like they're run-ons almost. And it's
I really didn't mean sentences so much as paragraphs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. One of the things, like if anybody's ever done like design or anything like that, you'll know that white space is important, and white space is important in general. You should read it. Not what I meant. But it's not just how do you use elements on a page. It's how do you use the blank parts of a page. And similarly, moments of relative stillness or quiet in an otherwise fast-paced scene can be really, really powerful. If you have a fight and then there's a stop, that can say a hell of a lot. And in an argument too, like if there's sort of an uncomfortable pause or a moment where nobody says anything, those things can say as much as an actual, moment of action or something.
Yeah, I like when movies do that. Like there'll be like just a chaotic scene, war or whatever, breaking out, and all of a sudden, like the sound will drop, and just the focus will be on, like, it'll be slowed down, and it is sort of setting the stage for the stakes, I think, before the action speeds back up. And there are ways to do that in writing as well, like inner dialogue and stuff like that. If there's a legitimate moment where time is stopped or standing still or something. Also, before the fight scene, I like to set a stage before the fight scene, when I am able and when it's natural to the story, like setting the stakes and reminding the reader what exactly is at stake here.
There's actually a great body language thing in an episode of all things Scrubs that I saw recently. Did you guys watch Scrubs?
I loved that show.
I love Scrubs.
Yes. So this is actually, we're very early on. I think it's the final episode of season 1. And so if you don't want a Scrubs season 1 spoiler in a way, but I mean, come on, it's the scene where Jordan, Dr. Cox's ex-wife, tells the whole table all their secrets. And one of the things she says is that JD slept with her and Cox still loves her, right? And do you remember the way this ends? Everybody leaves the table, and then it's just Cox, who's John C. McGinley, and JD, who's Zach Braff, and JD's just sitting there, and Cox he looks at him, and he just gets real close, and then he just kicks the chair away and walks away, and that's it. he just looks at him like he gets really close to him, and you think he's going to say something, and then it's just like, whoa, like that's awesome. Things like that can be really powerful.
I like the way that show played with expectations, and also they blended humor, like it's completely goofy.
Humor and heart really well.
They did goofy, surreal things that were not real, but then they'd hit you with like this emotional, like punch in the gut of something that was very real.
Yeah, those are fun.
Yeah.
Robin loves those when we think that's and then somebody dies. Yay!
Some great lines too. I love the one where Jordan says to. Or no, I don't remember who said it. So Dr. Cox says to Jordan, I don't like the way you look at me when we're having sex. And she says, then stop turning around. Remember that?
I think so.
It's awesome.
Yeah, snarky characters can be a lot of fun for dialogue if you don't do it in a way that's overly stupid. You know what I mean? You got to do that carefully.
Yeah, and you have to stay in character too. But I love what Dave said about setting the stage ahead of time. I think he does that really well. I just read a great action scene yesterday in AD, which was exactly that. Stakes are set, and then just all this shit just like rains on them, and it's kind of immediate, but you're reminded right before it happens how important everything it is. So that is a really, really great way to do it. It's tempo. It's quiet. It's pianoforte, right? It's quiet, loud, and you can do that well. I do think it's worth, again, going to TV and film, especially film here, film vocabulary. Actually, TV is getting good, though. Like Daredevil has killer action scenes. But watch really good action scenes and see what they do and how they do it and see how that applies. So 3 examples. The lobby scene in The Matrix is amazing.
Oh, I love that.
Like there's a lot going on in that scene, and you're never lost. You know exactly where every single character is at every single moment. There's bullets and shrapnel flying everywhere, and yet it's easy to follow.
What I like about that scene, and then I'll let you get to your other examples, is that it knows exactly what it is. That would never play as a realistic action scene. It's one where they're in the Matrix, and it is, over the top on purpose. It's one of those things that's this set piece where it's like, how much shit can we destroy in as over the top of a way as possible? It's got that scene where Trinity comes up behind the guy, kicks the gun out of his hand, shoots him in the back. Like that's just over the top crazy shit. Anyway.
But that's knowing your space, right? Like if you're writing something realistic, you can't do that. If you're writing a superhero book, that absolutely works. The hallway scene in the original Oldboy. I haven't seen Spike Lee's remake, so I don't know. But the use of geography in that hallway scene is phenomenal.
And Daredevil,
I think Daredevil does something. Right.
Totally.
Daredevil
twice,
similar.
not even once.
But yeah, right, they did. But the original South Korean Oldboy is phenomenal for that scene.
That's not the only scene it's phenomenal for.
right. And I think Dave hit this really well with the moments of quiet and stuff. I think Saving Private Ryan does a lot of action very well, but that first 20 minutes when they're coming in onto the beach, onto Normandy.
That's one of the most amazing scenes I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. But when they're ducking under the water and the bullets are going through the water and it's all quiet because they're under and you could just hear but then they come up and it's super loud and then they go back underwater again. That's amazing. And there are ways that you can mimic that kind of rhythm in your copy. So just think when you really pay attention. We come back to this all the time. It's paying attention. Pay attention to dialogue. Pay attention to action. Pay attention next time you're having sex, right? Like really observe these.
What are you doing?
To take the blindfold off.
Wow. So anyway, I know we have to wrap up, but I think that paying attention to the things that you consume will help you be a better artist.
It's just one more way that you can get away with saying, okay, if I tape this. Just saying. All right. So this has been the Self-Publishing Podcast. I was trying to be really, really on the ball and look very quickly at next week's show because if you're live, it's next week we're skipping, right? But then, and we actually don't have a topic yet for that one, but we are getting better thanks to Sean. He's been putting people in ahead of time. are putting topic ideas in. So,
and we'll be on Zoom next time.
Yeah, and by the way, if you watch live and you want to make sure that you're in on the Zoom situation, it's not as simple. Like there's, I think we're gonna have a permanent link.
You have to download an app, but there will be a permanent app.
But you download it once, and then it's just real easy. But it's kind of like attending a webinar in that way. Those of you in boot camp, it's the same setup. So anyway, so that'll be.
Yes. Sorry about my echo too. I'll solve that by the next time. And I know it was 2 in a row, so I'm doubly sorry.
Just invite like the whole baseball team into your room and tell them to be quiet. They'll just serve as a buffer for noise.
But get on that fast, because Audra's going to have you like order acoustic panels, and they take time to ship and everything. And because it took me longer than I thought, so I would do that. I would have talked to her fast about it.
Is there any place I can just get them in Austin? Do you know?
Maybe. All right, so let me
talk about this on the air.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let me stop the show. We'll see you. We'll see y'all next week, and thanks for listening.